All right, everybody, welcome into the Fifth Dimension podcast. For today's show, I am joined once again by the lovely Cathy O'Brien. This is her second appearance on the Fifth Dimension. Cathy, so blessed to have you on the show, here to shine your light. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast again.
Thank you for having me. I've looked forward to coming back and having more discussion with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's such a pleasure. And our last podcast was filled with such light. And, just despite your own story, it's really inspiring and remarkable that you're able to bring such a space of light and love despite all of the trauma and pain that you have endured in your lifetime. Maybe a good place to start. I know it's been about a year since we've last chat, and there's probably going to be some new listeners who maybe didn't get the chance to tune into our first episode. Do you think you could, maybe just talk a little bit about your story and your own backgrounds and how that has shaped to what it is that you're doing now, and really exposing what's going on at the highest level by simply telling your story and doing so from a space of love and authenticity.
Yeah, I'm so fortunate to even be here. After my experience, my torturous experience in MK-Ultra mind control. Yeah, I'm a survivor of CIA's MK-Ultra Mind Control Project Monarch, which is a multi-generational mind control project that follows a scientific formula for external control of the mind. And that is the same formula that's used on an individual, a nation, or the world. So knowledge is our defense against mind control. And once we understand those components of it, we have a defense against it, and realize that what we're seeing today has been going on a long, long time behind the scene. We're just finally seeing it now. Truth is coming forward in spite of censorship. So it's an amazing time for me to see people waking up. I've been waiting for this my whole life, and is certainly motive for me to smile. And I share my life story so that people understand the components of mind control, and especially the multi-generational aspect, because that is exactly what has been slowly eroding our society now through generations, trying in their effort to create a compliant, robotic society for what Adolf Hitler, George Bush, and Joe Biden termed the New World Order. It's a slave society agenda, and mind control is their weapon. And once we understand and look in their bag of illusions and secrets, we find that it diffuses their power. They only have as much power as we give them or let them steal. In my case, I didn't have any choice. I was an infant when I was born into a multi-generational incest-based family. My father had been sexually abused. My mother was sexually abused. My grandfather was running a Blue Masonic Lodge where secrets were being kept against the population while they slowly gained control. So there were a lot of local politicians that were in attendance at my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. And my father's sexual abuse of me was while I was an infant. So I didn't know what he was doing was wrong. I didn't know there was any other way of life, but my brain knew it was wrong. My brain knew, and it responded with our defense against trauma too horrible to comprehend, this innate birthright response mechanism in our brain that once we understand it, we can free ourselves from mind control. But it actually physically shuts down neuron pathways around the trauma so the rest of the mind can function and develop normally. And this was found to create a heightened suggestibility because the neuron pathways of the brain are actually shutting down, leaving the subconscious mind wide open to be easily led and manipulated. Our subconscious mind doesn't think like our conscious mind. It has no filter. It just takes information in. It doesn't question. It doesn't reason. It doesn't critically analyze that information. It just gets pumped in. Well, this was found to be especially true in multi-generational children because after 3 generations of passing down information, it's like our brains do that. We pass down genetic information. We pass down knowledge base, and information and belief systems and abuse bases. Mm-hmm. We pass it down from generation to generation, like how we know language, you know. So yeah. After 3 generations of abuse, it becomes autogenic in the brain. So babies, whether they're abused or not, are actually born more compliant after 3 generations of this abuse. It had been found through the Hitler-Himmler research that came over with Project Paperclip in the wake of World War II, when we imported the Nazi and fascist scientists into the US and their information. It was found that trauma is the basis of mind control, because it's like our conscious mind freezes in fright and leaves our subconscious mind wide open to be easily led and manipulated. So it was found that the ultimate trauma, the most horrific trauma, is sexual abuse of a child prior to age 5 while their brain is still forming. So, you know, let's consider that information and bring that forward. And we see why this pedophile agenda, this so-called gender confusion, this sexualization of our children, this trafficking of children across open borders, is actually a mind control agenda. And when we realize that, we'll stop buying into the narrative that's being pushed so hard that this is normal. It's not normal. It's against our innate nature, and it's our birthright knowledge to know that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I look at sort of the pain that I'd say a lot of individuals are in. You know, for example, I think it was a tweet yesterday where there was a doctor justifying cutting off, I think it was emergency saving surgery for somebody who was unvaccinated, right? That was just one example of sort of a cruel, inhumane type of a normalized ideology, right? But I look at that and to me, I see that doctor as somebody who's justifying it as in pain themselves. They seem to be a victim of this trauma-based mind control where this ideology is really being able to be just ushered in, because it closes you off from your heart center. It closes you off from that deeper knowing that we are all interconnected and meant to be operating from a space of love. So you know, with the mind, it feels like the mind control that's taking place, the trauma that's taking place, is the center for all of our societal divisions, all of the narratives that are taking place and at the forefront right now. And you know, it almost feels very important to take a look at ourselves and start to ask the question, how is it that we are programmed and have, you know, different traumas within ourselves that are maybe at the steering wheel at an unconscious level, right? Because I that to me, you know, maybe you could speak on that and how we go about doing that, because that to me feels like the center of why all of this is able to even take place in the first place. It's just because people are so hurt and they do have that trauma really closing off their heart.
Absolutely. You know, mind control is a sliding scale from the kind of tortured robotic mind control that I experienced on a White House Pentagon level to information control, because we all formulate our thoughts, our opinions, and actions based on what we know. And we need to know that knowledge base has been deliberately altered for a long, long time. You know, it's like I was saying, we pass knowledge down, and after 3 generations, it becomes autogenic. Well, suppressed knowledge, that like the knowledge that's our defense against mind control, like the knowledge that we have this amazing capability within us to heal ourselves, body, mind, and spirit, that we have this amazing immune system. Pertinent information like that has been deliberately suppressed from society so that we don't look within ourselves and find our inner strength, but look outside ourselves to be led by this cabal, this dark energy force that's been slowly creeping in on our society for a long, long time, using trauma as their basis of their control, imposing national trauma after national trauma. And then, of course, global trauma with mind control masked as a virus being unleashed on humanity, and that caused people to freeze in fright and become compliant and easily led. And it really is when this New World Order effort, this great reset, this global cabal really took a strong control over the minds of the masses. So we have been conditioned for generations, and we've also been repeatedly traumatized. And I think that people now are looking around and going, what in the world is going on? They're seeing all these imposed traumas, and the answer is mind control. And knowledge is our defense against it. And when we follow the money, we're going to find the same handful of perpetrators have been in control for a long, long time. It's a small handful. It's not a majority at all. Pull back their wizard's curtain and you'll see it's just a small handful of dark energy force, evil perpetrators against humanity who are pulling levers, on their media voice to make themselves look like the all-powerful and like there's more of them than there are. There's not. It's only a handful, and it's inexcusable that we allow this handful of low vibration, dark energy force, evil, controlling, greedy perpetrators to manipulate our brilliant minds and lives anymore. It's within us all to reclaim our free thought, free will, strength of spirit, to live our power of love. And as soon as we do that, it's game over, because that is their greatest fear. They know that that's where we win. It's like love is the most powerful force in the universe, and they can't stop our strength of spirit. They can't possess our strength of spirit, but they can stop our expression of it by controlling our minds. I know from my experience in MK Ultra that without free thought, there's no free will. With no free will, there's no soul expression. Without soul expression, we don't have that ability to tap into that infinite source of strength and love that is ours, that who we really are inside. We can't think to do that. And without that, we're not taking a stand against this dark cabal. And we need to stop complying with them. We need to start protecting the children from their pedophile agenda. And it's within us all to do it. We just got to stop looking outside ourselves for those answers. Look within and tap into their greatest fear. And that's the power of love and the strength of the human spirit. It's like the light that is exposing everything in their darkness. And like I said, it's like, it's not new what's happening today. It's just that we're finally seeing it. So many people are bringing it to light and shining their light that they're exposed. They're getting really frantic and desperate. They're making a lot of mistakes. They're exposing themselves left and right. And here we are, humanity, having this amazing spiritual evolution. What an amazing time to be alive, living our life's purpose. We're all here for a reason. And this is our time. This is our time to stop this dark energy force from manipulating our beautiful planet and our beautiful lives any longer.
Absolutely. And when you can escape from the chains of that almost enslavement within the mind, there is such beauty to recognize, and you recognize the beauty was there all along. It's never really left. It's just our perception that gets warped. And something you talked
Yes.
about is how you were rescued from the mind control program, right? There was, that's a big part of your story. And but in the same sense, even though you were rescued, you still put it as you were handed the keys to your own mind, in a sense, right?
Yes.
You had to really still do the work yourself to engage in this healing process, to overcome the trauma, overcome the abuse, and really shine in the way that you are. It's interesting because I look at the collective at large, and I do think there is a collective case of trauma-based mind control. And it's like, what is that step to handing them the keys and getting people to uh, take on this journey in a sense? I think there's still a lot of people, and I agree with you. I think there's more people awakening than ever before, and we've already really started to plant the seeds of this awakening. But in the same sense, there's also I feel like almost a sense of urgency because they're ramping up the narratives and the game plans and the technologies to really possess and hijack the mind in particular. That seems to be what all technology is aimed at. So how do we, like in the way you were handed the keys to your own mind, what does that entail for, just people in our own lives? I think we all know people who are wrapped up in whatever the mainstream narratives are, or they're still living from a space of fear. And I think inherently we know that these people are still capable of love. They are able to express love in some capacity, but maybe they're still going along to getting along, feeling fear just in their everyday. So what is that step in actually helping give them those keys and get them on that path of empowering themselves to recognize that they are under a form of trauma-based mind control?
Yeah, we all need to look within ourselves and stop looking outside ourselves for someone to come in and save us, and big government to step in, and big pharma to step in, and big tech to step. They're not gonna come and help us. They're doing it to us. So it's up to us to look within ourselves and go back to the reason why we're even alive. What is our life's purpose? Reconnect with our nature. Get outside, get your feet in the ground, feel the earth beneath your feet, breathe in the air, listen to the animals, and see how nature interacts with each other, and the compassion and care that they take for each other. And we'll remember that it's within us too. We just forgot. It's been generations now. And fortunately for me, Intelligence Insider Mark Phillips was working the highest levels of mind sciences to preserve the sanctity of free thought. That was always his life's mission. And he looked into the information on mind-brain function, and he found that pertinent information was being suppressed from society, and had been since the 1947 National Security Act and the CIA came into play, so that they could start using mind control against the population. They wanted to keep people from looking within themselves anymore. So that pertinent information on mind-brain function, our amazing resiliency of healing that we have within us, body, mind, and spirit, that strong immune system that we've been blessed with all along, has been suppressed. And it was suppressed from education, from the medical community, from mental health, and from society as a whole. And he saw that simple, basic birthright information suppressed. He was livid, and he wanted to release it. But like I said, he was in the highest levels of intelligence. So he was bound by laws of sedition, and he couldn't release it. He was also seeing from those levels of intelligence that he worked, he was a spook, which means he could wear any hat: CIA, FBI, NSA, Secret Service, whatever he needed to be, he could be that, and to be in positions at any given time. That gave him a view into this shadow government, this dark cabal, this swamp, these evil dark force perpetrators slowly creeping in on our society and eroding our constitutional values of freedom and justice for all, for their new world order agenda. He saw children being taken in and out of the White House. He saw how the pedophile agenda was being used as a mind control agenda, and how the blackmail operations were being used to compromise politicians and judges and people in high positions. And he was livid. He wasn't the only one. We need to realize there's a lot of good people in all agencies, all intelligence levels, all aspects of society. It's just everything sacred's been infiltrated, and there's still good people within doing all they can to make a change, and yet the media is not giving them voice. Controlled media doesn't give them that voice any more than we're given that voice, and so we don't hear about that aspect going on. But Mark had many friends in intelligence who were very concerned. So he decided to do something about it and reached into the Washington, D.C. swamp in 1988, before people even knew what human trafficking was, before they even knew that the pedophile agenda was happening, before they even knew that mind control was as prevalent as it is. And he rescued my daughter and me right out of the Washington, D.C. swamp. And he handed me those keys to my mind, that information on our birthright knowledge that had been suppressed. He just reminded me that it's within us all to heal ourselves. And he taught me some really great pearls of wisdom along the way and some brain tricks like writing out memory. So the compartmentalization of memory that happened in my brain when I was an infant was before, it's autogenic. And so at the same time, I was safe for the first time. And even though I couldn't think to trust Mark, I didn't know good people even existed in the world anymore after my tortured experience for 30 years, that I didn't realize that, but my brain knew, and it started opening up and information started leaking and I started remembering this repressed memory, this traumatic memory, like most people start to remember around age 30 anyway, when electrochemical changes happen in our brains. So I was 30 and I was safe and my brain was celebrating and opening up and leaking this horrible memory. And Mark taught me, he said, just write it out, pick up a pen and write it out. And that way it doesn't have to be relived. Instead, it shifted from the emotionally incomprehensible over to logic, where it takes the logic part of the brain to move a pen. So that's an important, thing for us to know and realize that that's the critical analysis part of our brain that moves that pen. We need to get writing by hand back in our school system so our children can process information and not be indoctrinated with it. It's an important part. It's an important little brain trick for all of us to be using right now, to take whatever is immobilizing us, whatever is emotionally incomprehensible, whatever our trauma or our grief, whatever is going on that's holding us back, write it out and put it in and shift it over to that logic part of the brain. Put it on paper where you can consciously deal with it, and then add a solution. Mark taught me right away, voice no negatives without a solution. Not only did that keep him from having to listen to me gripe and complain about my past, but it helped me to learn to think above and beyond what I thought I knew, above and beyond the trauma and the control, to actually open up the neuron pathways in the brain and make it fire in new ways. It was like it gave me an ability to rise above the storm and to get a clear view forward. So I hadn't been able to have any free thought for 30 years. And that was a beautiful way to start exercising my brain into thinking free above and beyond manipulation. And it's something that we all can do. When we add that solution, we become empowered. And once we do that, go take a walk, to do something really nice for yourself and breathe in the air, just enjoy the life that we're intended to live. Because on that level, there's so much joy and happiness. There's so much synchronicity and so many miracles that are unfolding right in front of us that we're being blinded to by this bombardment of negativity. We need to get back to seeing that again, because life is full of miracles and possibility. And it's beautiful when we reclaim that and live that again.
Right. Absolutely. And I agree with you. And it feels to me that it's an inevitability that we're only going to continue to unlock that, as we align ourselves more with it. How could that not be the case? Right. It just feels like that is the way that our energy is shifting. But in the meantime, I suppose it is important to look at, and you talk about this being a very small group of people who are sort of
Yeah,
operating behind the
yeah,
curtain. And I thought your story about George W. Bush, about, then you saw him going through a case of uh trauma, being hunted. Maybe you could talk about that just to explain, give it a little backstory on what I'm talking about. But even then, it goes to show you maybe the politicians themselves are not the direct
yes.
problem. This is something that's much deeper. Even Mark himself, he was working within the agencies, but he was able to make such a positive difference and create light. So do you think it's possible to initiate this change with the institutions and agencies that are kind of driving it and operating it? I mean, if the people within it make a shift, or where do you see, or how do you see this change being uh, brought about? Because I don't personally know if it's possible to continue to operate when, let's say the government makes the most of its money off of human trafficking and drugs and all of these terrible, terrible things. It almost needs a complete 360 type of reboot if it even wants to operate from the space of the heart that we're really talking about and tapping into, that we see as the solution.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when people lead, leaders follow. This is our time. This is our time to re reevaluate our values and reprioritize our priorities, and reconsider the structure of big government that we've been looking up to for so long. We need to downsize this government big time. We need to stop these agencies from having so much control and get active again on a local level. We don't need the federal government meddling in the minds of our children. We need to have them educated to the real values of life again, instead of being indoctrinated with this gender confusion and misinformation that's being promoted in the global education system that went into place just as soon as the states became reliant on federal funding. Let's get it back down to a state level and a community level and get active again. And that's just one example. We need to get the FBI out of our child protective services. Above all, that's crucially important. Get them out of there. They don't belong in there. And we need to realize that any kind of organizational structure like that demands our attention and our involvement. And we need to become active on those levels in order to ensure that the children are actually being protected. Instead of looking outside ourselves for everyone else to live our lives for us, we need to become active within our own lives again and take responsibility. That was one thing when I woke up from mind control, and I looked at what had been forced to do under mind control, what the plan is for us all in this new world order agenda. It was horrifying, and I wondered, how could I ever live with myself, let alone love myself, after all I'd been forced to do under mind control? And Mark told me, he said, you are not responsible for what happened to you under mind control. The power of mind manipulation is so strong that everyone everywhere needs to realize once they've been manipulated, and wake up to that, and then they'll have the knowledge that's our defense against it going forward. But they need to realize they're not responsible for what they did under mind control. A lot of people are even struggling with the fact that they got the injection or put on a mask and masked their children and limited oxygen to their brains. They're having a hard time dealing with the compromise that they felt they had to do. Well, they need to realize, like what Mark taught me, I was not responsible for that. My abusers were. And we're talking about the same cabal. We're talking about the same handful with the secret knowledge of mind control. They are the ones who are responsible, and they need to be held accountable for what they've done. They need, at least for us, to stop complying with their illusions of control and power. And once we do that, we can then take responsibility for our own lives. Mark told me, he said, you are responsible now that you're thinking. You are responsible for every act every breath, every thought you have going forward. That, and it was like, wow, responsibility. People think it's such a big, overwhelming something. It's an ability to respond. It's an ability to choose according to our life's purpose and love and truth and true to soul. What an amazing thing we all have is the responsibility to make our own choices and live our own lives. So to me, that was the most exciting thing going forward. And I chose everything I do from that point on was going to be out of love and purpose, and not out of bitterness or hatred or anything like that, because these people are very dark. They're low vibration and they feed off a dark energy. They feed off of hatred. They feed off of fear. They feed off of trauma. That's their energy source. That's what they want. They're not going to get any more of that from me. They got that from me for 30 years. They're not getting one more bit. I am going to live love. That's the most powerful force anyway. And that's where, my personal victory is. That's where my ultimate justice is to maintain the healing that Mark empowered me with, and to be able to make my choices going forward. And that's for all of us to do. We can all do that. We need to understand that we're not responsible for what we've done with this constant barrage of trauma. This has been a very systematic form of mind control. And even though it's been going on for 3 generations, soul is stronger than genetics. We can overcome that too. And then we can learn to think in bright new ways that actually empower, and start reorganizing our communities with healthy nutrition. People love to take care of the land. We took care of it forever. It's just our innate nature to nurture this beautiful planet that feeds us, and we'll get back to all of that. But first, we've got to reclaim our free thought and start living love, and realize that we've been manipulated for a long time. This is our time. This is our time to shine. This is our time to reclaim our lives and restructure our lives back to the beauty it was intended all along.
Absolutely. And what you were speaking of kind of reminds me of just that saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I think we do need
Yeah.
we need to open ourselves up to that possibility of forgiveness, but in the same sense, forgiving doesn't necessarily mean sweeping it under the rug or forgetting what took place, and just sort of it's about finding a deeper level of acceptance so we can heal the collective
Yes.
trauma that has taken place. And that's something I've been thinking about lately, is there's this idea of, like, I see the wars outside of ourselves and how we fight amongst each other. It's no different than the own wars that have taken place in my own heart, and the internal battles, and
Yes.
just the struggles that I think we all have. So I think there's a deeper level of compassion that we can all tune into for one another,
Yes.
and really learn to not just explore, but really learn to express. Because I think we've really lost that art of expressing that love and expressing that reverence in that spirit. And I think as we're moving forward, as the agenda is continued to be expressed by the governments and rolled out and whatnot, I think the counteracting force is just to simply go along our own path and continue to express love, and
Yes.
continue to express. Um, I've been paying a lot of focus to sort of what my own internal stories are, right? And like, how do I sort of rewrite my own personal narrative, right? When I think when you're under, trauma-based mind control, for example, you're given a story about reality. You're given a way to view the world. And very much in opposition, I think, to our own senses, to our own intuitive understandings, like you were really pointing to. And so I think something that I think could be very beneficial for people is almost take on the role of the storyteller for themselves, and really craft a new internal story, right? I mean, because, let's say when you were the first 30 years of your life, I'm sure the story that you were operating on, the sense of self, if there was was one to it. I'm sure there was to an extent, but it's not as the fully empowered divine being that you identify with yourself as now, right? There's definitely a shift in the internal story and how you perceive who you are. I mean, could you talk about the two differences and what life for you, like what was your overall view on life when in the midst of the trafficking and being uh, really a mind control slave to the system? Is there in even, I guess, I want to say we're always on this process of individuation, but how much, like I would say, freedom as an individual was present within that circumstance? And do you think that translates to a lot of people, even if they're not in, let's say, a direct MK Ultra scenario like you were, but maybe they're enslaved to a narrative, they're enslaved to fear, to an ideology? Is there like an individuation that's present when you're in sort of a mind control scenario?
That's an absolutely profoundly excellent question. And it's like, while I was extremely young, and my father's sexual abuse created that compartment. And then he was using me in child pornography, and it created another. And then he was trafficking me to my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. And so there's another. And as these neuron pathways are shut down, there's no intercommunication in between. So I'm not connecting any dots there. It's kind of like, when society is divided like it is today, everybody is compartmentalized and there's like no intercommunication. We need to open that back up, of course. But in my case, I lost more and more and more free thought. And yet the essence of my being, who I am inside then and today, is the same. It's like the spiritual aspect of being. And it's something that I could relate to, because even though my childhood had been so full of abuse, where I really thought there was nowhere to turn for help. I mean, my church, my Catholic church, was involved in the occult ritual MK-Ultra aspect. And my school was involved in the educational MK-Ultra aspect. My community had been really singled out hard. So everything around me was saturated in mind control, much the way society is today, where we look around and it seems so saturated. And yet there was inside of me this wondering and this wishing that there was some place in the world where people didn't hurt each other, where they were good to each other, where they did enjoy the animals and didn't hurt the animals, and could just enjoy the beauty of nature and all like that. So I remember thinking that as a very young child and having such a strong desire for that, and like almost a realization beyond my age that that is how life should be, and how I will see it at some point in the future. When I got through all this other, it was almost like a divine assurance on a spiritual level. So I carry that knowing forward. And perhaps it is that allowed me to survive the unsurvivable, and to be able to even emerge from that and be living the love that I am, in a constant state of celebration, because I don't take my free thought for granted at all. And I celebrate every moment that I'm free to live true to soul, and to live that love that I dreamed of as a child, that here it is. So I have a lot of gratitude for the beauty that life is. And I think if we all just look within ourselves, regardless of what our childhood entailed, and regardless of what our life unfolded, and the disappointments and challenges and difficulties and grief and trauma, and all that we've experienced in life, look deeper to within ourselves, and find that strength of spirit. It's ageless, it's timeless, it's so profound in magnitude and truth. It seems like truth and love are synonymous on that level, and It's what's intended all along. Children, I think, are born with that. It's why they laugh so freely and why they play and have so much joy. That's the way children are supposed to be. They're not supposed to be subjected to um, sexualization and the kind of negative indoctrination and to mask up or grandma dies type thing that they've been subjected to. We've taken a beautiful innocence and changed that. We can still retrieve the innocence by realizing the magnitude of what has been done. Because in so many ways, we've all experienced just kind of like what this planet's about. And this is our spiritual evolutionary time. And again, it's like spirit is timeless. So the children too can heal in light of truth and in light of our lighting that path to freedom by living the love we are and becoming active in communities and dealing with each other eye to eye, heart to heart, soul to soul again. Hug the kids. They didn't get hugs for a couple of years there. They need those hugs, and they need to realize that it's not their responsibility to protect grandma or whatever. That's a very strong form of mind control right there when you look at it, because children who are sexually abused, oftentimes the abusers say, if you tell anybody, your doggy's going to die, or if you tell anybody, your parents are going to die, and then it's especially prevalent in satanic ritual abuse form of mind control. It's a very strong, it's a strong mechanism. And really, many of us, when you think about it, whether we masked up or didn't mask up or got the injection or didn't get the injection, it was out of fear and love for others that we were doing what we were doing,
Yeah.
And when we get back to the basics of that, all of a sudden we find even that can be divisive. When we get back to that level of love, all the divisions, no matter how intense they've been, are they don't matter anymore. And we do have compassion for each other, because when we reclaim our free thought, that's the first thing to come back is compassion, and be able to help others and understand them and stop snap judging based on what we've been conditioned to think, and
Yeah.
realize that so many differences we see, even the clown hair and the over makeup and the piercings and tattoos, and it's not a overall blanket statement, but pretty much it's because of depersonalization that's been imposed. They've been through so much trauma, and especially with the piercings, they're saying they've been depersonalized so much they don't even feel anymore. And it's a plea for help. So instead of looking at people and saying, oh, you're this, you're that, it's like, wow, reach out with love and compassion and understanding, and all of a sudden we're really all of the same spirit and of the same love and the same purpose, and all differences just dissipate. They don't matter anymore. They're skin deep anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think even the word compassion, I was reading on the etymology of the word. And if you were to translate it, calm is to be with, and then passion means suffering. So to be compassionate with someone is to be with them in their suffering and in their heartache, and extend from a space of love instead of adding to that suffering. And I think that's what we all uh, inherently strive to do, even if we don't necessarily know how to, but we do get lost in that divisiveness or the rhetoric of intense, whether it's jabbed versus unjabbed, left, right. You have all of these different, very hyper polarized issues. I think we do really lose sight that we are of the same spirit, of the same being. And, in regards to your own healing journey, uh, what was that transition for you like to go to basically be given the keys of your own mind? I'm certain this is a process that, it doesn't just happen overnight by any means, and there is necessary healing that needs to take place.
Right.
But in the same sense, that a question I've been um, playing with is, at what point are you no longer healing, and you're healed? Because there can be the identification with the trauma itself, and not the forever need to heal it or re-perpetuate or relive it, right? And sometimes we can get lost in the identification with our trauma. And maybe, you know, that's a necessary step at some degree to understand it and really come to terms with it. But at what point would you say you went from I'm healing from this to I am fully empowered and am healed and am able to operate from that, I would say, space of resonance?
Yeah, healing is a process. It's not an event, and it definitely is it's like a learning path in life, you know, where we learn to not play the victim role anymore and realize who we really are and are empowered. And in my case, I consider healing to be when I can't be triggered anymore. There's so
Mm.
many people who have come out at the high level, um, high profile people who have come out of MK Ultra just screaming, you know, and saying, this happened to me, and then boom, they're pulled right back in because they're not fully healed yet. We've got to open up all those compartments in the brain. And when we do that and get the brain firing properly, then we can't be triggered back in. So to me, as soon as you can't be triggered back in, and as soon as you are in control of your own mind and life and make your own conscious choices true to soul, that is when you're healed. And still, there's like a lot of dust pieces, a lot of little things that come forward, and they don't change the overall picture, and they don't make me they're not triggerable, and they don't make me any less in control. But there's still realizations, you know, we all have them every day. It's like when Mark passed away in 2017, I lost my hero, my soulmate, my best friend. And I learned then that I made a conscious choice that what he taught me for healing from within myself was I would honor him with and stay strong and not cave in to the grief, not um, not let my heart break in two. Instead, I carry his love forward with me. My heart's double size, and I carry all the beautiful things he taught me forward so that others too can see freedom and reclaim their free thought just like I did. I chose to carry our shared life's purpose forward and realize there that healing that I learned can extend to dealing with grief, and to realize that the memories that I had with Mark are all within me, and they're for me. Anytime I want to access them, the pearls of wisdom, the strength, the motivations, the joy, the laughter, the fun we had. I have all that within me anytime. So, you know, love lives on. And those memories live on. It's a beautiful thing to realize. So that you know, that's part of the healing process too. You know, is it? I think in some ways it would be never ending in that regard because of the new realizations that come forward. I think the most profound one for me was um, when in my healing, and I was so in love with Mark. I was so in love with him, and he was everything. Um, and of course, you know, I wanted him, and he wouldn't have anything to do with me. He said, you have to heal first and know who you are in order to have something to give in a relationship, you know. And that was a huge motivation for me to heal. You know, love's the
Mm.
greatest healer and the greatest motivation. So I was healing really, 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 really fast. And still in that process, I had to find out who I am. And I couldn't determine that from outside input, because I'd been subjected to that the first 30 years of my life. So I found who I am at the base core energy of my being, that love, that spirit within me, the energy of who I am. And I realized then that I don't have to try to love myself in spite of what I'd been forced to do under mind control. I could just live the love I am. So once I realized that, and I was in control of my own mind, Mark and I fell very much in love, and shared, I think, the most beautiful relationship a couple can have, because we weren't 50-50. It was never push pull. It was 100. We were both so strong in who we are. We're both very strong spirited, and we definitely disagreed. And when we would have disagreements, we didn't fight about it. One of us would get to learn. That's who wins the disagreement, is who learns something, you know? So it was all win, win, win. And we had a lot of fun in our differences, and found that those differences really complemented each other well, because Mark was um, so strong in who he was, is so capable and genius, brilliant. He expected other people could be that too. And we can all only be who we are. We can all just do our best, along our own life's learning path. And so I was always the one who would be like, well, they're learning, they're giving their all. And he'd be, oh, he'd be so frustrated with that, and it was fun because we were a good balance for each other in that regard. And that differences are such a beautiful thing. And I think people everywhere are going to start realizing that again. And this nonsense of being divided by differences is inhibiting our ability to learn and grow and to enjoy the other possibilities that there are in this world. So there's a lot to be learned and a lot to celebrate, and it all just begins with looking within ourselves and reclaiming our free thought.
Absolutely. And as you're saying, I think differences can be what we make of them, and really they can be a uniter in the full sense. I mean, if we all look at it as we're all individual pieces of this much larger puzzle, well, then we need the
Yeah.
differences, we need the variance in
Yes.
order to get this full picture, to really see the totality of what we're working towards. And I think that's becoming a bit more clear. And I think people like you and I, like we're able to see ourselves in others, which is it makes it easier to embrace differences. I think there's still the moments where maybe we are there, as you said, it's almost like a sprinkle of dust. Maybe we're tested in a certain way, or we have a new understanding, or there's a new insight, and there's a deeper level of integration that needs to take place. But we can
Yeah.
continue to show up from a space of empowerment. And I've become very conscious that, especially in the last month or two, that is a choice in every moment, not just a larger intention. It's a large intention, but it's also an intention that you need to consciously hold, or it's possible you will fall back into old programs, patterns, conditionings, whatever it may be, if you're not consciously choosing to show up and claim your own free thought and claim your own freedom to be who you are. And I think a lot of people, I don't think we realize what a conscious effort that actually entails. And because, I think a lot of dependencies we have, we've internalized, it's on the system, it's on the division, it's on what we're so
Yeah.
used to. And so it really takes an uprooting of that dependency, of that need to participate in that, in order to actually show up and continue to operate from a space of empowerment. We need to really almost let ourselves step into the flames, if you will, and uh, allow what no longer serves us, kind of like in the metaphor of the phoenix,
Yeah.
in a sense, and kind of be reborn into
Yes.
this I'd say this higher ideal, which is love and freedom. And from there, it's really it fills me with hope and joy and light, just to imagine what the possibilities are if we are collectively choosing to create from that space. Because then I think we're really going to unlock a deeper purpose and meaning for our being, in the sense where we can co-create, we can experience with one another. Okay, so what's next? Like the possibilities on that, they're really endless. And it kind of makes this time period we're in, uh, you can see why it's necessary and how we're learning from it. But it's like, okay, I'm ready to consciously show up and create that reality now, you know, like like
Yeah.
it's I'm ready to bring that empowerment and that light to others. And that's something you're doing marvelously, and I think something we can all strive towards. But do you see the time we're moving into? What do you anticipate for the future? Because I know, if we look at what's what these people are planning in these institutions and the Great Reset, and surely there might be some financial collapse. There's might roll out more diseases. It's really they're going to keep continuing to play the same agenda, play the same game, and try and amplify that um, low frequency. Um, how do we arm ourselves with truth and with light and find, I would say, an endurance to keep going despite all of that? You know, a lesson I've been trying to tell for myself is I don't have to endure life. I can embrace it. And it's much easier to live by that mantra when things are going well. But when you're in, let's say, the external world is throwing things at you left and right, uh, it can be difficult to really embody that. Like you have to really consciously take the time to choose that state of awareness when the external is completely chaotic. So, what are your thoughts about what we might be stepping into collectively versus how you can show up from your own individual state of awareness and continue to make a difference in light despite the external noise and chaos?
Yeah, when life throws that external noise and chaos at me, I'll pick up a pen and I'll vent it out through a poem and with a solution and everything. And I've written a zillion poems over the years, just venting and expressing um, as a means of getting my brain to fire above and beyond the bombardment of negativity that's experienced. And then I've had a great lesson along the way. When Mark and I first started speaking out, we were speaking out to help my daughter. It was love for my daughter and love for humanity, concern for humanity that compelled me to speak out. And yet back in 1990, talking about, human trafficking and mind control and all like that, people didn't have that much point of reference for it. So they weren't very kind as I was bringing that truth to light, but I had to for my daughter's sake. So I kept speaking out. And it didn't, I never took it on. I didn't need validation from people outside myself for what I was saying, or to know that what I was saying was what I needed to do. So I spoke that truth, and I thought, how sweet that these people don't want to believe. Who wants to believe this? Who wants to believe we share this planet with such a dark force? So, that was just kind of touching in itself. But I don't need that kind of validation from other people. Like I said, I found who I am at the base core energy of my being. So, that's their path. That's not mine. And I figure everybody's on their learning path. They're going to get it eventually. Truth never goes away. It always will blossom at some point. And I hear from people today who say, I heard you 30 years ago and I didn't believe a word you were saying. I wish I had, because it's all true. And it's like, yeah, I wish you had too. Maybe we wouldn't be in this
Yeah.
situation today if that truth had come out. But still, as we're going forward as society and sharing truth, it can be frantic, like, oh, you got to see what's happening. And so, we need to drop that frantic part. People are going to get it. They're going to see it. Everybody's seeing it these days. They are waking up, and it does take its own time on people's own learning path. The best thing we can do for ourselves and for them is to live our freedom, live our love, live our joy, live truth, and can continue on that path of living that lights the way for others right there. It's like during mind control masked as a virus, the little children in their masks looking so scared, and I wasn't wearing one, and that confused them and scared them even more. And I would smile at them, because and assure them with my whole being, with my energy, with my vibe, with my telepathy, with my mind, that we're all going to make it through, that we're all okay, and it's okay to live love. And wow, what a pretty twinkle in their eyes, just to do that, because to say, take off that mask, isn't going, that's not going to do it. We need to live our freedom. We need to live our love and be the example. And that's going to light their path forward. If nothing else, it's going to give someone hope at a time when they need it the most. These are harsh times we're living in. People need hope, and they need to see the joy and the love and the peace and the unity that's actually happening. Get out in your community. You're going to find out that people are very active and interacting with each other and doing beautiful things for and with each other. So, you know, that's important as we go forward to embrace
Yeah.
the reality.
100%. And I think the stories that they give us about the reality they want to impose and the division and
Mm-hmm.
all these narratives, it's vastly different than when I'm out in the community and interacting with people directly and just seeing people how they interact and sort of the world that we're living in. I think we are operating at a higher frequency and from a place of love than people will even want to give us credit for. Certainly there's levels to
Yeah,
it, and there's more we can work to free ourselves from in terms of our dependencies on these systems and buying into certain narratives. But even if I see somebody with a mask nowadays, I think for a while there was that internal trigger, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're still doing that. But
yeah, yeah,
catch me on the right day, that might still be an internal reaction. But I'd make it a point where I do want to smile at them and actually, be genuine, hold compassion, spread love. Because if I shame somebody, that's only going to put them further into their own, they're going to retract and go back further into their belief system. It doesn't
yeah,
work like that. We do need to be compassionate and loving. And I think there's a time and place for having the difficult conversations and, setting the necessary boundaries. And, maybe we can have the conversation. Hey, why is it that you feel compelled to wear that mask? Just genuinely ask and try and understand. I think there's a time and place for that. And, maybe it won't lead to the results we want, but it's worth an attempt if the heart is in alignment for it and it feels right. I was talking to Paul Check on my podcast, and he left me with a profound question that I think you'll like. And it's just to go, I was kind of asking about how to approach these times as well, and really what we're living through. And he simply said, well, what would love do now? And just to continually
I
ask
love
that
that.
question, what would love do now? What would it do now? What would it do now? And just make that almost sort of the intention in itself. That ask that question in any scenario, you're bound to get a different answer, but you're going to be guided by love, and you can trust in that direction. Love is not always going to be rainbows and butterflies. It will be once in a while, and it's nice when it is. But like I was saying, sometimes it is that more difficult conversation, or making a hard decision, or ending something, or whatever it may be, right? So that's something as I've been embodying that and asking that more and more, you start to realize how much of our own patterns and ways of living maybe are not rooted in love, because love would do the complete opposite thing that I'm used to, and maybe that's uncomfortable. But if I'm committed to the path of love, willing to step into that, willing to dive into it, willing to open up the heart to the possibility, and I think that's a beautiful way to just navigate these times, because I don't think there's ever going to be a clear answer, or a right answer. I think we look for the right or wrong so much that a lot of times it's just gray.
Yeah,
We have to trust in the heart. So
yeah. Love always wins. It's the most powerful force in the universe. It's inevitable. We're just moving through these motions at this time, and from my point of view too, realizing fully, and having been around these perpetrators, this dark energy force cabal, their plan that they follow is so linear and narrow, and they had 100-year plan for pushing in this new world order, slave society agenda, and they're at the end of their 100-year plan. That's something we can look to too, and realize, my testimony for Congress, Transformation of America, was released in 1995, and it outlines and details exactly everything that's unfolding even today, because it has been their plan. their plan has been falling apart now for a good long while. And the Great Awakening is such a powerful reality that's going on in our world. It's a spiritual evolution time. And ultimately, there's no question humanity's going to come out of this bigger and brighter and better than ever. And we're there because this is the end of their plan. They don't even have a plan beyond much further. So they're they're frantic, and too late. We see them. We see what's going on. It's over, and we know where the corruption is planted, and we're just going to reevaluate everything. Downsize big government. Take the healing methods that Mark taught me that are in PTSD Time to Heal. When Mind Control Masters of Iris was unleashed, I posted it on my website with a pay what you can if you can option. It's secured that way, and everybody can have it regardless of income or location. And just take the simple, easy to self-apply information, apply it to yourself, and start reclaiming that free thought to the ultimate extent, so that we can move forward a little bit faster and stop them a little bit sooner, because it's inexcusable that they get one more moment of our brilliant minds and lives. This is our time. It's our time to shine. Let's empower each other and start living that love, and then it's game over. We win, they lose, and we get to go forward from there.
Absolutely. And, I think we've already planted the seeds of truth and planted the seeds of love. I mean, we can even look back. We had a conversation a year ago about this, and since then there's been great revelations. There's been great progress. I think it's very easy to get lost in the narrative. Sometimes we don't realize how far we've come. And I've heard David Icke say the same thing as you, where he talks about, you should have been with me 25 years ago when I was talking about this stuff. This is the greatest time he's seen, because of how many people are actually paying attention and really engaged in the conversation. So the fact that we've already begun to plant those seeds, I think maybe, maybe this is, I guess, a question I can ask you. What can people look for in their own community as a sign of maybe that we are on the right path? What are those signs going to look like? There's the assurances that, we are operating from a space of light, and we are meeting this agenda, these narratives head on, and they aren't going to follow through. I think a lot of times we look for the darkness, or we look for the technology, we look for the narrative, instead of looking for the solutions and looking for the love that's directly in front of us. Is there anything you would advise for people to keep their hearts open to, or their eyes open to, and really begin to gain an awareness of?
Yeah, look through eyes of love and trust in truth again. Learning to trust in truth, it sounds like just, words, but that was a very important thing for me, to be able to trust in that. And once you do, you start seeing it around you. You've got to raise yourself to that vibration in order to start realizing that it's everywhere right in front of us, and it has been all along. It's kind of like Mark would say, when miracles become common in your life, you're doing something right. And it's so true. He gave me a concept of time, which is a concept of awareness. Like I always wear my watch, this is his watch. It's so sacred. But I always maintain that conscious awareness, the conscious time. And yet I found that in my healing, that timing is more important, that there's a synchronistic flow. There's this alignment of miracles and coincidences that affirm the path that we're on. There's so many beautiful things that unfold in front of us when we open our eyes to it and dare to see the reality of what's in front of us. And in so many ways, that's it's the most beautiful gift of free thought that I have found, is being able to align with life's purpose and synchronistic flow, where all the miracles do unfold and the affirmations are right there, that we're on the right path, that we're doing, living the love, and life is full of miracles. It is a miracle that I'm even here. And as long as I'm here, I'm going to keep living that love and sharing the message so others too can join in the joy of living life as it's intended.
Absolutely. And I think as we continue on, that beauty is just going to continue to increase. I mean, maybe you could look at the polarities of it, where certainly the narratives are going to increase as well. But if our own space of love and we open up our hearts in new ways, well, it's almost like that shadow stuff. It's not that it doesn't matter, but it doesn't impact us in the way that they intend, and therefore isn't
Right.
going to have the same type of impact on the collective at large. So I think it's a fine line of know what's taking place, know the darkness, certainly, but when you gaze into it for too long, you become it and you become engulfed by it. So to stay anchored from a space of light, and I think trust in the own inner flame and trust in our own ability to shine the light through it. We don't need anybody to come and save us beyond ourselves, because we're fully capable of doing that. And maybe we can help others unlock the keys to their own minds, to their own hearts. But, we have to, it's like that old adage, the cliche saying, I guess cliches are, they say them because they're true, but you can bring the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink it. Right. So we can open up our hearts to others and extend that love. And I think as long as we do that, it will be reciprocated over time. Even if we're just now planting seeds, soon they will blossom, right? Maybe we're in the murk and we're emerging soon as a beautiful lotus flower. I don't know. But I'm definitely optimistic about what we're moving into. And, it's from experiences and stories like yours. If you can come back from, the horrific trauma that you went through in the first half of your life to be in such a space of love and light and live with such compassion, and in alignment with truth, I think that serves as an inspiration for everybody to do the same, to be able to navigate whatever darkness or shadows they may be in and emerge from a space of love and start to embody that regardless of the circumstance, right? Because I can't think of any other stories or people that I've talked to that have been through something as similar as you. So it's truly a testament to your own journey and just I would say the knowing of yourself to be able to show up like you do. Like it's truly remarkable and an inspiration. So I can't thank you enough for doing that and shining the light the way you do, because it's really it's leading the way for others. Absolutely.
I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And I really appreciate what you're doing, bringing this truth to light. It raises the vibration of the whole planet when we all collectively start living that love. That that is they can't affect that. That'd be like darkness creeping in on light. It can't happen. And their energy is very dark, like I said, and they feed off of negativity. So, we'll just stop their power source and live love. Then they have nothing, they're gone. We win.
Absolutely. Create from the space of love, and we're just creating the
Yeah.
solutions and making that the reality. So, Cathy, is there anywhere you'd like to send the listeners to further interact with your work? I mean, I can speak to, the documentary Trance was fantastic, really eye-opening. I mean, it can be, there's a lot of harder truths I think people they need to accept that are present. But again, when I watched that movie, I was still left, despite all of the hardships that you talk about and learning about your own past, is you're still left with a space of, wow, I feel empowered, I feel ready to um, show up from a space of love. So I can really speak to that movie, and it was remarkably done. Is there anywhere else you'd like to send them, and where people can find the movie, your work, your books? If you have anything upcoming for 2023 you want to bring awareness to?
Yeah, everything is secured. All my information is secured on my website because it's not only been censored, it's been diluted, made available in free books all over the internet where the information's altered and changed. So go to the source at trance-formation.com. That's trance-formation.com. And that's where I've got PTSD Time to Heal posted in ebook form where everybody can have it and access it. It's it's been secured there since. I've seen where people were being traumatized on a global scale, and it's reaching people all over the world, wherever they are, so that they can apply these simple healing methods to themselves. I've also got podcasts and blogs, and I can be reached through my website too. So that's trance-formation.com.
Great. No, I'll put that in the episode show notes so everybody can go and check it out. And I would highly encourage everybody to, and I'm definitely going to um, grab the copy of your ebook as well, because there's, I've been on my own healing journey in the sense, and I definitely have come to a space where I feel healed. I was asking that question about healing to healed. I feel like I'm healed in a lot of ways, but I know there's always more to dive into and explore. And so I would love to, continue that and read your work. So I'll definitely pick that up, a copy myself. And I'd love to send you a copy of my poetry book. I put out a poetry book, and I'd love to send it to your way. So I'll have to, off the air,
I love that.
yeah, I'll get you a copy and send it to you, because it's about, all the poems are centered from the space of love and freedom and awakening.
Yeah.
So that's sort of been poetry is my creative way to really articulate a lot of what we were talking about in love. And so, and you mentioned poems. That's why I was like, oh, all right. I
Yeah.
resonate. So I'll definitely send you a copy of that as well. But Cathy, it was so wonderful to be able to
Excellent.
connect. And let's definitely plan on doing another podcast soon, because it's always so wonderful to chat with you. And, I feel personally like this is the greatest way to start a week. Like, I feel going into the week now, like full of light, empowered, like this. There's no better energy to really step into the world to than what we've talked about here today. And it's that love and that light. And so I can't thank you enough for sharing that with me and all the listeners. And, I'm just excited for how the future is going to unfold.
Yeah, I am too. Thank you so much for this. And yes, let's do it again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you all to all the listeners for tuning in, and we will see you all on the next episode.